Tika Wardana is an ambitious architecture student, who goes to the best university in town. Her elder brother, Duta, is also a student. He is majoring in theatrical arts. Duta dreams of becoming a producer someday. Finally, the third and youngest sibling is Dodi. He is a schoolboy who usually spends his day having fun with his friends. At first glance, it may look as if they belong to a wealthy family, but in reality, it is the exact opposite. The Wardanas are a lower middle-class family that live in a cramped house in Jakarta. Mr. Wardana works at a repair shop, while his wife, Mrs. Wardana, sells cookies on a small scale. Although money is always tight, they have vowed to give their children the best life they can. This is why the three siblings study in upper-class institutions. However, everything is not as easy as it looks. At Tika's university, she is always bullied by the rich girls for her poor dressing sense and lack of makeup. As for Duta, his dream of becoming a producer remains a dream due to lack of funds. He has now given up and is on the verge of changing careers. Finally, the little boy, Dodi, is often teased by his mates for wearing cheap sneakers. Despite all this, the family tries to be happy with what they have. Every night, they gather around and have dinner together, where Mr. Wardana cracks a few jokes and makes everyone laugh. The siblings also team up and have fun from time to time. In one instance, they sneak into a rich couple's wedding and enjoy free food. There, Tika meets her crush, Bayu, who does menial jobs to earn a living. After a while, the siblings are caught, but they seem to be used to it. They simply run away, not caring about the consequences. But one day, everything changes. Mr. Wardana suddenly passes away in his sleep, leaving the family devastated. Now, the major source of their income is gone, and since they have no savings, living is going to get extremely tough. Hence, that night, Mrs. Wardana gathers her children to make some important decisions. The elder siblings, Tika and Duta, know what's coming, so they express their desires to leave university with immediate effect. However, Mrs. Wardana says they don't have to. She respects her late husband's decisions, and that's why the children must continue studying and graduate. For the funds, Mrs. Wardana has decided to sell the house. The decision is a tough one, but it is something that had to be made. The next morning, as the family is preparing for the day, two lawyers suddenly show up outside with some important news. To explain in detail, they play a video on their laptop, and surprisingly, Mr. Wardana is in it. At first, he jokes about being alive, but soon comes to the point. He explains that he recorded this video a few months back, knowing that he might die soon. Now, he has an important announcement to make. In a shocking turn of events, he reveals that he is actually rich. The family cannot believe what they are hearing, and Mr. Wardana goes on to say that he is the son of one of the richest families in Indonesia. In fact, he has a large inheritance, which he kept hidden from his family for 21 years. The only reason was that he wanted his wife and children to be independent. But now that he is gone, he wants them to have the money and live a proper life. At last, before the video ends, Mr. Wardana says that he loves his family a lot. Hearing all this, Mrs. Wardana and the children are left in utter disbelief. Even after the lawyers are gone, they are still convinced that everything is just a prank. However, when they go to Mr. Wardana's bank that day, they are handed over a massive amount of 500 million rupiah. The lawyer from earlier also shows up and reveals that once they spend this amount, they can withdraw more. Elated, the family immediately heads outside to enjoy their newfound wealth. At first, they enter a fancy restaurant, book the VIP room, and order all the lavish delicacies. They even invite a poor man and force him to eat with them. Following this, they head to a mall and go on a shopping spree. Mrs. Wardana gets loads of fancy clothes for herself, which she has always desired. On the other hand, the children get themselves new mobile phones and other gadgets. From this day onwards, their lives completely change. The next day at school, the little boy, Dodi, makes his friends jealous by flaunting his expensive Adidas sneakers. Everyone is stunned how a boy from a poor family could afford these. Meanwhile, Tika starts dating her crush, Bayu. One day, His motorcycle breaks down, so Tika buys him a new one for a whopping 19 million rupiah. They ride it the entire day and have fun. But at night, Bayu returns the motorcycle to her, saying he can't just take it. At home, Mrs. Wardana has become obsessed with exotic clothes and jewelry. She buys a whole bunch of them, and so in a matter of just 3 days, the 500 million rupiah evaporates. However, it is not a problem at all. As Mr. Wardana mentioned in his video earlier, more funds will be available soon. That day, the lawyers again arrive and play a video. Once again, Mr. Wardana greets his family with a cheerful face and inquires if they are living a lavish life. He then explains that they will get access to 15 billion rupiah now, which is 30 times the previous amount. This sends his family into a state of frenzy. Starting the very next day, they go on a monstrous spending spree. At first, they enter a large mansion and immediately buy it without any negotiations. Then, they go to a furniture store and buy whatever they touch. They also buy the security guard there, promising to pay him triple the amount. After this, they go to a luxury car showroom and buy not 1 but 3 cars, even though none of them know how to drive. As the days pass by, the family grows distant from one another. Even though they have all the wealth in the world, the closeness and unity that they had is slowly fading. When Mr. Wardana was alive, they used to have dinner together, but now, everyone eats separately. In particular, the little boy, Dodi, is very annoyed of what they have become. Meanwhile, Tika's rich friends who used to bully her have suddenly become her friends. Envious of her newfound wealth, they pretend to have a genuine interest in her life. Tika also doesn't mind being with them, but in the process, she starts ignoring her real friends, who have always been by her side. They had dreamt of taking part in the annual physics quiz competition and winning it. However, now that Tika has become distant, her friends have decided to quit. On the other hand, the elder sibling, Duta's big day is approaching near. He has organized a drama show, for which he has invested a lot of money. Every week, he keeps hiring famed actors and actresses from all over the country, not realizing that they may be too expensive. Duta simply knows one thing: his father has left them with a lot of money. As for Mrs. Wardana, the money has gotten inside her head the most. Every evening while she is returning home after picking Dodi up from school, she listens to some street musicians and tips them handsomely. With the days passing by, more and more musicians arrive, hoping to get rewarded by her. At one point, the number crosses 100, but Mrs. Wardana still has enough money to tip all of them. One day, someone catches her in the act and clicks a video. This video quickly goes viral, and it is even shown on the news. Mrs. Wardana is astounded that she is on TV for the first time in her life, so she decides to continue the charade. From the next day, she wears extensive makeup and goes to the same spot with a higher amount of cash. She even gives interviews and lies that she has been helping street musicians since years. Amidst all this, the lawyers show up for the umpteenth time and display another video which Mr. Wardana had recorded some months ago. He cracks a few cringe jokes and reveals that they will have access to a further 15 billion rupiah the next day. With this, the family, except for Dodi, gets even more greedy. Mrs. Wardana has started showboating so much that one day, a reporter asks her if she would like to donate to the needy people. Since she has set the bar very high, Mrs. Wardana says, yes. She sets a date, and promises to provide a lot of food, clothes, and money for the needy people. Meanwhile, Tika has started spending an awful lot of time with her rich friends. She often goes on trips with them, parties with them, and even has sleepovers at their place. In the process, Tika starts drinking heavily, and in one instance, she almost gets persuaded into swallowing a pill. Fortunately, with whatever sense is left inside of her, she spits it out and flushes it down the toilet. Tika then finally realizes that she is slowly going into a downward spiral, and that getting out of it will be a challenge. As she proceeds to leave the bathroom, she also hears a bunch of girls backbiting about her. This makes her feel really bad, so she immediately heads to her true friends and convinces them to practice for the upcoming quiz competition. On the other hand, Duda has continued hiring new personnel, even though they are not really required. Sadly, with only one day left for his drama premiere, all his actors and actresses go on a strike. They want to get paid before the performance. Unfortunately, that evening, the lawyers arrive with some bad news. They showcase yet another one of Mr. Wardana's videos, and while the family eagerly waits to hear an amount, he reveals that his savings are finished. The family is shocked as they were expecting another large sum. Mrs. Wardana wants 200 million rupiah for her charity show while Duda is in debt of around 1 billion rupiah. Despite the setback, the family decides to continue on with their lives. Mrs. Wardana uses up all her savings to conduct the charity show. Tika, with some motivation from her boyfriend, gets ready for her quiz competition, and Duda begs a powerful politician to fund his drama in exchange for a small promotion. On the grand day, everything seems to be going as normal. Mrs. Wardana has amassed hundreds of boxes to deliver to the poor. Tika and her friends get on stage for their quiz competition, and Duda has successfully managed his drama. But soon, everything starts going downhill. Due to the excessive crowd gathered outside Mrs. Wardana's house, a girl gets injured and she has to be rushed to the hospital. At the quiz competition, a group of policemen suddenly arrive and apprehend Tika and her rich friends on the accusation of consuming narcotics. Meanwhile, at Duda's drama show, the politician comes up on stage and tries promoting himself. However, instead of getting applauded, he is insulted by the crowd. They call him a corrupt politician who is good for nothing. Duda tries to calm them down but fails. As a result, the show, which was supposed to run very well, is ruined. In this way, the entire family falters on the most important day of their lives. The only positive is that Tika is cleared after her urine tests come out negative. Her real friends and Bayu also forgive her, despite her rude attitude as of late. Later at home, the family gathers, but they are not in the mood to talk to one another. The situation is very tense, and to make matters worse, the lawyers show up with some bad news. They have come along with a man, who reveals himself to be Mr. Wardana's younger brother. The lawyers then reveal that Mr. Wardana had left some of his inheritance for his brother, and now, the latter has come to claim it. Since the family has already spent a considerable chunk, they will have to hand over all their current properties like home, cars, and so on. This breaks Mrs. Wardana and her children, but they also realize that possessions are temporary. The only thing that lasts forever is family. Now, they finally come to the conclusion that money and fame cannot guarantee happiness. In the next scene, the family is back at their old house, living a simple life like they used to. Tika and Bayu are getting married soon while Duda has finally come to terms with his life. However, little did they know that fate has yet another twist in their lives. One day, the lawyers again show up and display Mr. Wardana's video. In the video, the old man is with his supposed brother, who has now taken all their property. And to everyone's surprise, he reveals that the man is actually a paid actor. He also reveals that his savings are not yet finished. In fact, they have not even spent 1% of his wealth. Mr. Wardana simply lied about it so that his family could again understand the value of money. He knew that they would get too greedy and lose the togetherness, which had always been their strength. At last, before the video ends, Mr. Wardana reminds his family that he loves them very much, and that he will keep helping them, even though he has died. At this point, Mrs. Wardana and her children are brought to tears, and it appears that they have finally learnt their lessons. However, at the end of the movie, Mrs. Wardana cheekily puts on a golden necklace, indicating that she is ready to go on yet another spending spree.